Hi students, welcome to session 2 of Things Around Us. In the previous session, what we studied? Do you remember? Okay, not a problem if you don't remember. We studied about living and non-living things. We also discussed about some characteristics of living things, like the structural organization of living things, the cell, which is the smallest living structure, which functions independently, and the group of similar cells perform a particular function that forms a tissue. A group of tissues form an organ, a group of organs form an organ system, and finally it makes our body. It makes a living body, like our human body. Living things exhibit movement and they respond to stimuli. They give response to stimuli. We also discussed that living things grow. So basically there are many characteristics of living things. So we have to discuss about all of the characteristics of living things. We discussed some of them in the previous session, and in today's session we will continue with the same topic, that is the characteristics of living things. So let us discuss about rest of the characteristics of living things. So the first characteristic in today's session is excretion. Yes, students, excretion is the process of removal of waste from the body of a living organism, as you know. Right? So living things remove waste from their body. Most animals excrete solid waste in the form of feces. They also excrete liquid waste in the form of urine. So basically we can say that living things excrete, like most animals, as I said, they excrete solid wastes in the form of feces. They also excrete liquid wastes in the form of urine. And you will be very amazed to know that they excrete gaseous waste. So I can write it down here for you. They excrete gaseous waste. This is the gaseous waste in the form of carbon dioxide. As you know that carbon dioxide is a gas. So most animals excrete solid wastes in the form of feces, liquid wastes in the form of urine, and gaseous wastes in the form of carbon dioxide. Even like animals, plants are also living things, as we know, but they do not have any excretory system. So how do plants excrete? Yes, plants get rid, this R-I-D, rid of waste, not in the form of feces or urine, but in the form of gum, resins, latex, etc. So these are the forms of excretion in which the plants get rid of the waste. These are its excretory products. So basically, we cannot say that animals and plants both have such type of system by which they get rid of the waste. But yes, they are living things, but they do have different type of excretory products by which they get rid of the waste. So, excretion is also one of the important characteristics of a living thing. Now, let us discuss about other important characteristic of living things. Yes, respiration. Students, the process by which living things utilize the oxygen to release energy stored in the foods they eat is called respiration. And plants and animals respire all the time. It's not like that plants and animals sleep at the time of sleeping they do not respire. Their body says, okay, now we will also relax. No, it's not like that. Our body, like animals' body, our body, they do not relax. They respire all the time. They do relax, but they need to respire all the time. It's not like that we function, that the functions of animals and the human body ceases. They do not stop. Because respiration is one of the very, very important characteristic of a living thing. So what is respiration? Let us see again. The process by which living things utilize the oxygen to release energy stored in the food they eat is called respiration. So breathing is a part of respiration. We breathe in, we inhale, we exhale. Right? So what happens while breathing? Why do we consider breathing as a part of respiration? Yes, by breathing we inhale air which contains oxygen. It is through this respiration process that this oxygen is used by the body to obtain energy from food. Even plants respire to obtain energy from the food they make by the process of photosynthesis. Thus, respiration is a vital process for all living organisms. So we can say that all living things breathe? Yes, all living things breathe. A fish breathes through special structures called gills. So let us discuss about some of the examples. Like a fish, like I said, a fish breathes through special structures called gills. Then human beings, how do they breathe? Yes, human beings breathe through lungs. Then frogs breathe through both skin and lungs. And insects breathe through tiny holes in their body. And the last example which we are going to discuss is about plants. Plants breathe through stomata, tiny openings present on the leaf surface is stomata. So, what we can say, stomata are small openings which are present mostly on the lower surface of the leaf, not the upper one. They help the plants to breathe. Even gills are the special structures which are found in many aquatic organisms that help them to breathe. So these are some of the examples by which we can say that living things breathe. They respire. Even living things feel, like a plant wilts when kept something outside without getting light, when it is kept inside without getting light. This shows that plants feel changes in the surroundings. Even many plants shed their leaves in autumn season and bear flowers in spring season. So these are the plants which respond to the changing seasons. They feel something. Similarly, animals and human beings also respond to changes in the environment. For example, we switch on the fan in summer because we feel hot, and we wear woolen clothes in winter as we feel cold. Similarly, a dog hangs out its tongue when it feels hot, and an elephant fans its ears to keep itself cool in summer. Even some birds migrate from one place to another as a response to change in weather conditions. So, animals and human beings have sense organs to help them feel changes. On the other hand, non-living things do not respond to the changes in the environment because they cannot sense or they cannot feel any changes. Right? So this was about the respiration and how living things feel. Now we will discuss about the other characteristic of living organism, a very important characteristic of living organism, that is reproduction. Students, living things have the ability to produce more of their own kind through the process of reproduction, or we can say that reproduction, because the ability to produce more of their kind is itself termed as reproduction. So living things have the ability to produce more of their kind through reproduction. Different organisms have different means of reproduction. Like plants, they reproduce mostly through seeds. Animals, they reproduce by either laying eggs or giving birth to young ones. So, all living things reproduce. Human beings and animals like dogs, cows, cats, buffaloes, etc., they give birth to their young ones. Birds, fishes, snakes, frogs, they lay eggs and the young ones hatch out of the eggs. But plants do not lay eggs and they do not give birth to their young ones like animals and human beings respectively. But plants produce seeds from which new plants arise. Have you ever seen a table giving rise to a new baby table? No, because it is a non-living thing. A table is a non-living thing. And we know that non-living things cannot reproduce. So this was about reproduction. Next one is the feeding. Feeding is also an important characteristic. All living things need food. Like green plants, they manufacture their own food in their green leaves by photosynthesis. But animals cannot manufacture their own food. Animals search food here and there. They are not like plants that they can manufacture their own food. Even human beings, they cannot manufacture their own food. So it is the plants, the green plants, specifically green plants, that manufacture their food, own food in their green leaves by photosynthesis. So, the green plants which manufacture their food, own food, by the process of photosynthesis are called autotrophs. Always remember these terms. Autotrophs. Auto means, what does auto means? Auto means self. And troph means food. Means self-feeding, self-nutriting. But animals cannot manufacture their own food, and that is why they are called as heterotrophs. So, here hetero means different and trophy means food. They obtain food. They cannot manufacture their food. So as green plants manufacture their food by their own, and animals cannot, so animals depend on plants and other animals for food. And we human beings also, just like animals, we depend upon plants and other animals too. So this is about feeding. The next one is lifespan and death. Students, now you must be thinking that lifespan and death, how can they be an important characteristic of a living organism? Yes, they are. Living things have a life cycle too. Living things have a life cycle like all living things, like animals, birds, plants, human beings, all have a lifespan. All have a lifespan, all have a life cycle. Though different life cycles, but they all have. So all living things follow a cycle of growth and development by which an organism takes birth, grows into an adult, grows old, and finally dies. Living things are born, they grow up, they reproduce, and then they die. So what we call this as? This is called a life cycle. A life cycle of a living thing. All living things have a life cycle. For example, mosquito. Mosquito eggs hatch into larvae. Then this larvae grows into pupae. And then this pupae finally grows into mosquitoes. So what we can say about a mosquito? A mosquito eggs hatch into larvae, then larvae grows into pupae, and pupae finally grows into mosquitoes. So this is the life cycle of a mosquito. Similarly, plants also have a life cycle. Like some plants, they live for only one season, while others live for many years, like even 100 years. This means that some plants complete their life cycle in one season, while others take years to complete it. So, like living things have a life cycle, non-living things do not have a life cycle. Even living things die. All the things that are living die someday. Even if they live for hundreds of years, one day they all will die. It means living things have a fixed lifespan. Students, have you ever been to a funeral ceremony of a computer? No, it is a non-living thing. Non-living things cannot die because they were never alive. But living things have a fixed lifespan. Living things that are no more alive are dead things. For example, dead things can no more show any of the features of living things, but they showed all these features like growth, excretion, respiration, reproduction, feeding when they were alive. So always remember that living things that are no more alive are called dead things. But remember, there is a difference between non-living things and dead things. Dead things do not exhibit movement or show any response to stimuli. But there is a difference between dead things and non-living things, and that is that dead things can no more show any of the features of living things, but they showed all the features when they were alive. And non-living things cannot die because they were never alive. So there is nothing like that. They showed any features because they were never alive. So this is about the lifespan and death. So we are done with all the characteristics of living things. There are some similarities between living and non-living things. But before discussing about similarities, let us discuss about the differences between living and non-living things. So what are some of the differences between living things and non-living things which you can keep in mind? Yes, living things are made up of cells. Non-living things are not made of cells. Living things follow a cycle of growth and they finally die because they have a life cycle, as we discussed the life cycle of a mosquito. Whereas non-living things do not grow or die because they were never alive. Living things reproduce. Non-living things do not reproduce. Living things excrete and they get rid of waste from their body. Whereas non-living things, they do not get rid of waste. They have no excretory system. They do not excrete because they do not eat. They do not reproduce. Living things need food and air to stay alive. Whereas non-living things do not need food or air to stay alive. So this is a very simple difference between living and non-living things. You need to learn all the points of the living things, and finally you have to add no, not, never in non-living things. So it's a very simple difference. So this is a very simple difference between living and non-living things, but there are some similarities between living and non-living things. Yeah, they are not the major similarities, but we need to remember about it. Like living and non-living things, they are made up of some material. For example, the body of human beings and animals is made up of skin, bones, flesh, and organs. But a pen or a plate is made up of plastic or metal. So they are made up of some material. Living and non-living things have material, means they are made up of some material. Even they are affected by weather conditions. For example, heat, cold and rain affect our skin. But they also affect metals or wood. Because metals, or we can take an example of iron or wood. Iron gets rusted on coming in contact with air or moisture. So basically we can say that living and non-living things are affected by weather conditions. These are some similarities between living and non-living things. So we discussed about all the characteristics of living things, differences and similarities between living and non-living things. I hope you enjoyed this session. We'll meet in the next session. Till then, keep enjoying. Bye-bye. Thanks a lot.